Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hillyard. So, Vaughn, we know those recommendations from the committee now that the DOJ charged former President Trump and his attorney John Eastman and unspecified others. So how are Trump and Eastman, how are they reacting to this?
You know, Donald Trump was here at his Mar-a-Lago private club yesterday during the course of that hearing, and he took part in a conservative radio interview in which he just briefly touched on the hearings, calling it a kangaroo court. And then he posted on his social media account, I'll let you see just part of it, in which he said, quote, "These folks don't get it, that when they come after me, people who love freedom rally around me. It strengthens me. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Americans know that I pushed for 20,000 troops to prevent violence on January 6th, and that I went on television and told everyone to go home." Of course, the second part of that there, his own defense secretary at the Pentagon said that he never received such orders that Donald Trump suggests that he at one point gave. And of course, his message to folks to go home came hours after the attack started. When you're talking about the first part of that statement, that what doesn't kill him makes him stronger, this is a man who intends to return to the White House. He is the only Republican in the field of candidates running for the presidency in 2024. And so he is looking at a potential DOJ investigation and potential indictments at the same time that he has his eye on his own political future.
And on that note, Vaughn, committee members say Trump should never hold public office again. We just heard Liz Cheney say that, but we know that he is running. He's already announced that 2024 run. So what are the political consequences here after the committee releases its final report?
Right. Any DOJ investigation, it could span additional weeks or months from now. And the potential indictment, that process could take potentially years. And so that is where, all of this is going to be running parallel to a presidential campaign. And also one of the criminal referrals was for the incitement of insurrection. And that criminal statute outlines that an individual should not be able to hold office of the United States again. Now, there are legal questions. Some legal scholars believe that does not include the office of the presidency. Others, though, contend that could very well preclude Donald Trump from serving in the White House again. Those are very difficult legal questions that have not been thoroughly answered in the past. And potentially, if the DOJ were to try to indict and prosecute him on these grounds, could try to make that case and preclude him from serving in the White House again.
That'll be an interesting decision to see. And Vaughn, there's also a lot at stake for the Republican Party as a whole, coming off the disappointing midterm performance. We know those 4 Republican lawmakers being referred to the House Ethics Committee for ignoring its subpoenas. So what are they saying about this? And do we expect the Republican Party to respond to the committee's findings?
Right. It's important that one of the chambers, the House, will be flipping just 14 days from now into Republican hands. And one of those members who was referred to the House Ethics Committee was Jim Jordan, who is the Republican slated to take over the House Judiciary Committee in January. This is an individual who spoke with Donald Trump, we know, at least 2 times on January 6th, but he has not been forthright about what their conversations looked and sounded like. And he did not himself comply with the subpoena that the January 6th Select Committee sent to him. And so the question here is, what does the House GOP do next session? Kevin McCarthy, who could potentially be the next Speaker of the House, already suggested that he intends to have the January 6th Select Committee investigated. And so Donald Trump has some key allies that are going to be serving in the U.S. House of Representatives in just a couple weeks from now. And the question is how much do they intend to try to defend and bolster him at a time in which a great number of other Republicans, including the likes of Ron DeSantis here in Florida, have remained silent about the decision from the January 6th committee to refer the former president to the DOJ for potential criminal prosecution.
Lots of moving parts here. All right, Vaughn, thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.